Good evening. I would like to call the May 4th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. I would like to point out that this meeting is being hosted through live stream on the city's website and by teleconference for public comment. Due to the structure of this meeting, I would like to remind the Planning Commission to have their microphones turned on and positioned so the audience can hear. Director King, may we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Beamstriffer? Here. Commissioner Lemke is absent with notice. Commissioner Hill? Here. Vice Chair Van Arsdale? Here. And Chair Wood?
Here. Thank you. Commissioner Beamstriffer, will you do this application?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here today, and thank you for keeping us safe and healthy in this room, and as well as out there. Lord, I pray that you just guide us in our decisions tonight, and thank you for allowing us to do what we do with the city, and in your name we pray.
Agenda item number 4 is the approval of the minutes for the April 20th, 2021 meeting. Are there any changes, comments to the meeting minutes?
No.
Then we'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting of April 20th, 2021.
Second.
Passed 3-0 with 1 abstain. Okay, agenda item number 5, public comment period. To accommodate public comment, we have made temporary changes to this part of our agenda that were necessitated to comply with COVID-19 directives. There is a temporary 2-minute per person time limit for all general public comments or non-public hearing items. All who wish to speak, including commissioners and staff, need to be recognized by the chair before speaking. Members of the public shall comply with the adopted rules of decorum, Resolution 4545, a copy of which can be requested through the city clerk's office. You may fill out a form and submit your comments online at www.hemetca.gov/councilchamberlive. Submittals must be done before 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. For those that wish to join by teleconference, you may join by calling 888-585-9008, and when prompted, dial 743-463-604#. You will be asked for your name prior to speaking. Reminder, if you are joining by teleconference, please mute your phone to prevent noise interference until you are given time to provide public comment. Also, when speaking, please make sure to mute your live stream. Please state your name and item you are commenting on before speaking. Are there any members of the public participating through teleconference that would like to comment on any items not on the agenda? Do we have any e-comments?
We did not receive any e-comments.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item 6A, item for general plan amendment 15-002, the Page Ranch Specific Plan Amendment, tentative track number 36841, and subsequent environmental impact report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dave Leonard. I'm contract writer to the City of Hemet. I'll be presenting this case. Come over here. No, just making sure it's the right one. Oh, I have to get it. always helps to have the right presentation to work from. We meet again on the Rancho Diamante specific plan project. This is a case that you heard in last December and went to the City Council, and we'll pick it up from there. The applicant is Strata Equity Group. The property owner is Rancho Diamante Investments, and the location of the site is south of Stetson Avenue, west of the Seven Hills development, also known as Solera. Under consideration tonight, you have a number of applications that you reviewed in December. But what is coming before you tonight is strictly the specific plan amendment. This is a proposal to change the classification of Warren Road from the 6-lane arterial and the 4-lane secondary. Under the actions by the City Council, they actually approved the project, and on the second reading of the ordinance for the zone change, they referred the matter back to the Planning Commission on this particular item. So therefore, the subsequent EIR has been certified and a notice of determination has been filed with the county clerk. A general plan amendment resolution has been adopted, and so has the tentative map approved with conditions. Up for consideration tonight are 4 items that are referred to you by the City Council. The first one being to discuss the methodology of the traffic studies that support the change of Warren Road from a regional arterial to a 6-lane divided highway to a local arterial. Actually, that should be an arterial to a secondary. Also to discuss the position of the Riverside Conservation Agency regarding the vernal pools in Warren Road that are adjacent to this site. Also to look at the traffic studies that have been approved or considered relating to development on this site and whether they considered the alignments of Winchester Road to Dominigoni to Warren. And to verify that there is sufficient space to accommodate left turn pockets from the Del Webb project, or Solera, safely onto Mustang from Warren Road. This is the project site. The area we want to draw your attention to is the curvilinear alignment up in the northeast corner. That is Warren Road, and the reason it's curvilinear is because of the vernal pools that are located there. This is the proposed change to the circulation plan. It's been on the plan since the adoption of the 2040 HIMMET general plan as a arterial street with 6 lanes of travel. There have been circumstances that have led to the street being constructed as a secondary street, and I'll get into that right now. The story begins in 2002 when there was an alignment study for different routes for Highway 79. At that time, because of these vernal pools and other considerations, the alignments for 79 was removed from Warren Road, or it was removed from consideration to a different alignment to the west of this site. With that decision made in terms of the alignment, then Del Webb Corporation came in to process 2 tentative maps, and they then had to confront the vernal pools. This is the evolution of the design of Warren Road as they began the process and as it concluded. What was driving the process was that it was determined that a 1,000-foot curve radius was needed to work around the vernal pools. A minimum radius for an arterial street is 1,500. The minimum radius for the secondary is the 1,000. So it's the curve radius that drove what kind of street was selected for development under the 2 tracks to the east. And this is how it came about for the 2 tracks with curvilinear design. The area in green was recorded as an open space lot, and the tracks have been constructed with Warren Road as a secondary street. Since that time, there's been an additional track. Where you see sheet 7 is where I just showed you on the 2 Solera tracks. D.R. Horton has now recorded another track map to the south of Solera, also relying on the secondary street standard. That map has been recorded with Warren as a secondary street. In addition to that, there has been a tentative map approved on the subject site, which is Rancho Diamante, that also relied upon the secondary street standard. So although the general plan circulation element required an arterial street, the environmental issues dealing with the vernal pools caused 4 subdivisions to be anywhere from approved to recorded to constructed using the secondary street standard. There have been two layers of traffic analysis prepared for the project. In 2015, when the specific plan amendment was originally approved, this was the first time there was a formal traffic analysis to evaluate the adequacy of Warren Road as a secondary street. And it was concluded that with the development on both sides of the street and cumulative traffic conditions, that the secondary was sufficient to handle the traffic that would be generated in this area. A second traffic study was prepared and processed with the track map 36841. This became part of the subsequent EIR, and that also evaluated the impacts of the track map on the circulation system. The questions come up: what kind of consideration did it give to the SR 79 alignment? These were the Riverside County, what they call RIVTAM model was used for the basis of the traffic analysis. What that does is evaluate the cumulative transportation system in the area, not only the traffic counts, but the behavior of traffic under different scenarios. So it's far more advanced than the old style, just calculating trips and circulating and analyzing the impacts of different intersections. This is far more up to date than that. It assumed that SR 79 would not be in place at the time of project build-out. And with that, it still had a determination that the secondary street would operate at an adequate level of capacity. Now, if you recall, under the subsequent EIR, we needed an overriding finding on traffic. And the reason for that overriding finding was cumulative traffic conditions on the transportation system, not driven by this project, by total development in the region. There was nothing this project could do to mitigate that, so it required an overriding finding. They did look at the SR 79 being in place when it evaluated the long-range city build-out, which is also part of the model. So it looked at two levels. One is project build-out, and the second at citywide build-out, and that's when the 79 analysis will be covered. So it was covered with and without the 79 alignment. Another question came up was about the left turn pocket adequacy on Warren Road on Mustang Avenue. If you've been out there lately, you'll see a left turn pocket exists, and that is a half-width improvement. These striping plans were approved as part of the Solera project, and it's at this time that the determination was made that there was adequate width in the street to accommodate the left turn lane. With the proposed project, that would expand Warren Road to a full lane width. So we were also asked to check in with the RCA, the Riverside Conservation Agency, to get a comment from them, and this opened up a whole new door. First of all, the vernal pools within Warren Road predated the MSHCP, and that alignment does not exist still within the MSHCP, yet the project site located adjacent to it does. Because it's out of the MSHCP, and because no change is being proposed to the alignment of Warren Road through the process, the RCA elected not to comment on the EIR process. The vernal pools, because we're not in the MSHCP, went through what was called a Section 7 consultation led by the Army Corps of Engineers, and also included Regional Water Quality Control Board and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in terms of evaluating the value of the habitat, agreeing on a design, a long-term maintenance, and issuing a permit for construction. If modifications are made to the alignment, and because it's outside of the MSHCP, we would have to repeat the Section 7 consultation process through the Army Corps. And I'm told at this point they would add Fish and Game, the California Fish and Game, to that process. One of the dimensions of a Section 7 now is there can be no net loss of habitat. That means if Warren Road were to be constructed and that habitat for vernal pools eliminated, then it has to be made up somewhere else. And under MSHCP policy, that cannot be in any area that's already in MSHCP control, because they figured that that's already conserved. So there'd have to be land identified, studied, reported on, negotiated to arrive at a changed configuration of a Warren Road. One of the other things we asked them was, what if we just moved the alignment entirely within the project site and avoided the vernal pools? And they said that under MSACP criteria for this area, let's move on to the exhibit now. We'll cover that. They allow for a maximum of a secondary roadway, which puts you exactly where we are today. And so if they would not look fondly upon expanding the Warren Road, relocated entirely within the project site as an arterial street. Not looking fondly versus not impossible are two separate different things, but there would be some time and cost involved in that. This will show you the two criteria cells. I've got a cheat now. Cell 3892 and 4007 cover the very top and the very west of the project site. And the majority of the site is not even in a criteria cell. But you can see from this exhibit how the vernal pool alignment is not within the MSACP plans, just barely. Then this exhibit enlarges and depicts the effects of the cell on the design of the tentative map and its relationship to the Warren Road alignment. Also, I should point out that there is a application being processed, what they call a DBESC. It's a negotiation process for the realignment of New Stetson Avenue. That's been underway for about 3 or 4 years, and a different consultant is working with RCO on that on behalf of the city. This shows an aerial vantage of the project area with the graded section of Warren Road as it exists, or as it was before it was completed. One of the things we want to point out is there is a bridge over Salt Creek. It is presently designed as 2 lanes of travel. Engineering tells us they could probably squeeze that to 4, which would be a secondary. It'd have to be reconstructed as an arterial. There's no funding mechanism or nobody assigned to who would handle that, but that's another consideration. This shows the general plan circulation element. Most particularly, the image on the bottom shows that section of the circulation element for Warren Road that is proposed to be changed through this application from an arterial to a secondary. So all that leads us to is our request to adopt the resolution agreeing to the information in the staff report, and this will be reported back to the City Council for consideration. And we'd be happy to answer any questions the Commission has.
Thank you for that. I do have a couple questions. For my benefit, can you explain to me what a vernal pool is and what its purpose is?
A vernal pool is a depression of land that collects water. And when it does, it creates a micro community of organisms that emerge seasonally. And those organisms are most commonly fairy shrimp. And it hosts a number of other microorganisms that are dormant in dry periods and are supported whenever there's water retention in a pool.
Okay. And that's why the road is going around it. Okay. Okay, you also mentioned you did a long-range study. What is the range of that study?
Okay, in regards to what level?
You said it was the last traffic study.
The traffic study.
Yeah.
There's
How far out did it go?
Sure, 2040.
2040. Okay.
That's built out of the city, so that would be the period that it's looking at.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Back on the original projection you had, because I remember growing up, we used to just take Warren in a straight shot. It was always a straight road. And when I watched the city council meeting the last time in this discussion, somebody brought up the fact that the curve wasn't even approved. Is that true when it came to the curvature of that road?
The records show that the City Council adopted the alignment with the track maps in approving the tentative map. The final maps came back for approval for them to be able to record. So those maps were recorded and building permits were issued for construction. So there's been several layers of approval of that alignment.
So the original straight shot road that I grew up on leaving town, I mean, why did they have to completely change the curve when the straight shot was working all these years?
Because it wasn't known that the vernal pools were there until 2002 when they were starting to do the alignment studies. We did a battery of environmental tests, field work, to look at the constraints of any alignment. This is one of several that were looked at. And it's because of these vernal pools, as well as some other factors, that they rejected this alignment. So it just wasn't known before 2002. And it's because of that knowledge, the rejection by Caltrans of that alignment, that it was known and they well had to deal with it in terms of configuring the alignment around it.
Oh, that beat threw me off. So is that the reason why they're kind of taking the 6-lane to a 4-lane? Is it because of the vernal pools being?
That's only because of the vernal pools.
I really still feel that 6-lane should be more important than the 4-lane, especially since we had a housing meeting last week. In 8 years, we're supposed to have a quota of about 6,466 units coming into Hemet in the course of 8 years. And I assume each unit will be at least a car, it's fair to say. So that's almost 6,500 more cars on the road over the next 8 years. And is there a second opinion or second option of keeping it 6 lanes, but going completely around the vernal pool?
There is a process, and that's going back to the Army Corps and eliminating the vernal pools, because that's really the key option here, because nothing else that works for the city in terms of maintaining an arterial design. And to do that, again, is going to be a 2-year process, at least, in order to go through a Section 7 consultation process.
So would it be a possibility to somehow narrow it down in that area to the 4-lane and expand it out to 6 lanes once you get through the vernal pool?
Well, what you have before you is not to redesign the roadways. This is to take the information that's being provided based on what the council has directed staff to do, is bring it back to commission for reconsideration of the reduction from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. And I do understand Commissioner Beamster's concern about the arena number of 6466. However, that number is not necessarily to construct, but rather have the opportunity to construct 6466 within the next 8 years. So it doesn't guarantee the construction of 6,400 and change homes, but rather the opportunity to build that within the next 8 years. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to have a 6,400 more trips or vehicles on the road. It's just an opportunity that the city needs to provide for the housing component of it. Whether that does occur or not doesn't necessarily limit it to the southwestern corner of the city. It could be citywide all over. So this may be, even if that were to come true, that city will build 6,500 homes, is not going to be concentrated on the southwestern corner of the city. It may be throughout the city. So the impact on Warren Road may be a portion of that construction, if that occurs.
Okay, but the study goes out to 2040, but we don't know what the details of that study is. How many houses, how many cars, how many what? Well, we just got to trust you that that study was done correctly.
Which study are you referring to?
Traffic study.
Traffic studies are done based on this project, not the 6,466 units.
I understand that. What does the traffic study that goes out to 2040 consider?
It considered adding this project. David, what was the number of units on this total? can't recall the exact number, but it was only for this project and the impacts that this project will have.
It's 586 units, but the traffic study did not look at just this project. It had to evaluate build-out conditions. What the traffic engineer looks at is a list.
Could you speak a little closer to the mic?
What the traffic engineer looks at is a list and characteristics of all of the subdivisions that are known throughout the city, and they plug those into this modeling program so that they have not only what's been existing housing stock, but what's been recorded and unapproved, and what's been approved and undeveloped, so that they have a full picture of what that is going to look like. Then they add a formula that includes traffic passing through the city. And then on top of that, then they do the modeling program to determine whether the adequacy of the streets and what level of street capacity is needed to accommodate the traffic at acceptable standards. And the study was reviewed and accepted by the engineering department, the city's traffic engineer. So that's what the city would like.
So basically, in retrospect, we're approving something that's already been done because the road's already in. The vernal pool issue came to light through those studies, but if we said no, and we said we'd like to see you still try to expand that to the 6-lane instead of the 4-lane, that would be a 2-year process, at least. And so as you bring it to us, it went to the city council first, came back to us to give our blessing, but the road's already in, and that was a question you had, I think, regarding that, because the council mentioned that it was just done. It wasn't something that they recognize as something that they approved. Is that? I'm just trying to get clear on that, because I didn't listen to that council meeting.
They didn't recall the approval of the curb of that part of the road.
So the funding to do that, because that's not a cheap project, came from where?
The developer of Solera. And they also, I should add, in 2019 entered into a long-range maintenance agreement to maintain the vernal pools.
With who?
Probably the Army Corps.
There is an association formed to maintain the vernal pools established through the Solera project. Who pays for it?
So, sorry, okay. A couple things. The other projects that we're not sure if they were approved by City Council, but somehow were approved on the east side of Warren Road, were approved by the city through the process of entitlement, through the process of, I mean, wouldn't the entitlement go through City Council?
Yes, the entitlement would go through the City Council, then they would review it again for the final map and bonds and agreements. Although it's highly unlikely that environmental issues would come up on a final map review, so it would just be the entitlement.
Gotcha. So then what the City Council perhaps approved was not the final alignment of that road, nor the reduction from 6 to 4. Because the question, I guess, to me is which came first, the general plan saying it's 6, or the tracks being approved somehow and making it a 4. And if why was there not a general plan amendment associated with making that a 4? Is it just simply because of timing relative to the adoption of the general plan? And if that's the case, then why was the general plan adopted with a 6 when there was already an existing 4?
Right. First of all, the City Council approved the 2 Solera maps on November 22nd, 2005, and they included Warren Road as a secondary roadway.
So at that point, it was a 4-lane then?
Yes. and all they were seeing was their frontage. That was contrary to the circulation element that showed it as an arterial street roadway through there. But the issue that kind of trumped that was the fact that it was a mitigation plan that had been worked out through this process to arrive at the design for Warren Road through this area, which was less than what the general plan required.
So, in terms of the designation of what the street is, we're kind of stuck in between two different documents. One that says what it should be, one, and then the not document, but the current condition and previous approvals that have established it as the environmental driver as a 4-lane. So, if we were to make a change to that, that process is not necessarily a easy one, and there would be possibly risks, from developers' interest and schedule and budget and everything else. But I want to go back, talk about the traffic study just a little bit too, because do we know the sphere of influence or the sphere of the scope of that study in terms of tributary? Because one of the things that for me personally, and I mentioned this to Steph earlier, is when I live on the south side of town, and like right now trying to get through Sanderson to go up to the desert, to the lake, to the river, anywhere up through Lambs Canyon and Beaumont, Sanderson Avenue takes 30-40 minutes just to get through town, and oftentimes I'll go down Warren instead just to bypass that. And as you drive out Dominguez Parkway, you see nothing but houses being built, and Hemet is kind of a conduit to get to the mountains, to get to the desert, to get to the river. We come up through 79. You drive down Winchester Road, it's the same thing. There's Spencer's Crossing and French Valley and everything that's being built there. And then you get a little bit further trying to get onto the freeway, and it's just, even though it's 6-lane, it's jam-packed. So my question, I guess, is the scope of that study, and we're only looking to 2040, does it really take into consideration what our kids and our kids' kids are going to be dealing with in terms of through traffic of the city? And what we're tasked with here is a decision basically on the last remaining, with the exception of Highway 79, but the last remaining conduit north-south through the city. And right now, even though it's a 4-lane, it's only 4-lane on one side at this point. There are a couple signals that, like at Cottonwood and at 74, that would need to probably be adjusted if we were to make it a 6-lane all the way through. But the decision here, I think, really sets there's no turning back. I mean, at least right now, we could say if we wanted a 6-lane, even though there was approvals made in the past that kind of put us in a situation where we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If we don't do it now, it's not going to happen again. So I think it's really, really important to understand that traffic study. It wasn't including Highway 79, but it was only out to 2040. That's not very far.
I can give you generic answers and these are really good questions, but I believe that we may have the author of the traffic study online. I'm wondering if we might have, do you see Charlene So on the list?
I only see phone number.
I'm available. I'm present.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that with public comment, but
We'll get a lot more
sure.
detail tonight.
But I think from the commission perspective, that's kind of the crux of our responsibility here is that we're here for a reason, because we want to not be the ones out there that complain about or do something about the complaints that we hear of. Why did they let that happen? And so this, I think, is a very what's the phrase, darned if you do, darned if you don't kind of a thing, frankly. I'm interested in some more public comment and then some more discussion on this. But
I have one. If you can go back to that map, the evolution of Warren Road right there. You kind of went over. So you were showing originally how the vernal pool was here and here, and then for some reason moved off the road through and came back down this way. But in the process, is what's around here, is there a way that the vernal pools can be larger so that we can somehow work with the road there, or the vernal pools have to be to a certain size?
This is all based on field work, and where you see the dark green is the actual vernal pool, and where you see the light green is an area of protection around it. So they don't want to have human activity immediately at the vernal pools. And that's what drove. Probably more time was spent on defining the limits of the vernal pool area and protection area than the alignment of the street. I'd also point out, if you look closely, you'll see the top portion of the street is narrower than the bottom portion. I think they were experimenting with different lane or roadway widths north of the vernal pools, expanding out to the south. So, I think I see some engineering input here where there's been some alignment considerations and making sure there's some form of consistency of the street roadway width through that area. That led to where we are.
Possible then that can happen, where you, like something like one of these vernal pools can be larger and replacing a smaller vernal pool.
would it be safe to say that any change to what's there now would be associated with going through that type of process?
It's very safe to say. It's very specific as to what's being protected.
Right. All right. So if you were to go through that process of making any adjustments, you would want to make an entire adjustment and relocate it to someplace entirely different than this spot, so that we could do a 6-lane. The environmental impacts to projects are sometimes very significant. The one thing that I think is interesting here is just the timing of this. Is that was so long ago, and I mean from my personal experience, that field studies and and the process associated with establishing designations of sensitive areas may vary with different staff, different management, different objectives. And those over time, I think you'll see different projects have different levels of concern and mitigation associated with them. And so this may have been maybe more conservative in nature, where if it was gone through now, maybe the farmer was out there actively farming, it may have been designated as something different.
And also, there were 4 agencies: Army Corps of Engineers, Regional Water Quality Control Board, Fish and Wildlife, and City of Hemet all had to buy off on this plan and agree on what was being coming before you as a result.
This was, like you said, it was back in 2005 when Robin and I were on the council, and she's actually much better at rattling things off because she actually served as chair of the RCA and was involved in it real heavily at the regional side. But, and by the way, what those vernal pools do is they get their crust, the earth is crusty, and that's why they hold water. They have a certain type of makeup. And so the fairy shrimp are what are endangered. And fairy shrimp, for those of you who are old enough to remember, on the back of comic books they used to advertise sea monkeys. Get your sea monkeys and you throw them in the fish aquarium and they'd last for a little while and they'd swim with these little things like this, and then they wouldn't get very big because everybody thought that they should turn out and look like a little monkey, but they didn't, and that's because their lifespan is very, very short. So, they lived a month, you were lucky, and that's that they would send you these pods of these little eggs, And those eggs, once they get watered, then they hatch, and they can sit dormant for eons. But as we watched this and studied this, they would come up with different areas they kept adding, and even a tire track depression would end up being a vernal pool. They would call it a vernal pool because the tire track would maybe hit it when it was muddy, and then when it dried and then got crusty, that became a vernal pool. There were a lot of places that we didn't have vernal pools in that area. And then they became vernal pools because something made an indentation, and it dried that way, and then that was crusty soil with those specific conditions, and they call that a vernal pool. So I'm not sure, maybe Robert can tell you, if some of this area ended up having those extra vernal pools because of conditions that happened after some of the studies were done. And yes, that original Highway 79 alignment that we were hoping for got way off track because of all the vernal pools and fairy shrimp issues.
To my point, it depends who's doing the surveys.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Any more questions for staff? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and open up public hearing. And do we have anybody? I think we do. Hello, Robin.
Sorry, it takes me a minute.
No worries. We get paid by the hour.
I'm older than I was when all this came back. Okay.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Is it okay if I pull this up? Just wanted to be safe. My name is Robin Lowe. I live at 232 Glenview Lane, Emmett. 92543 is located within Four Seasons. And I also sit on the infrastructure committee, of which this project did not come to us. And the last time I checked, we were responsible for 3 things that are addressed here, but we haven't seen this project. So I would like that entered into the record, please. I also served as the founding chair of RCA, and I sat for close to 18 years on RCHCA and dealt with KRAP. And most of that as chairman. I see a lot of loopholes in this, and I applaud you for reading your agendas. You did a magnificent job of asking these questions because they haven't been answered. Perhaps some of you have endured Warren and Devonshire, and you have endured Florida with Caltrans. But as I see it, the traffic is not going to decrease from those areas because of the development. It is also going to take place in San Jacinto and travel south on Warren Road. And because of that, unfortunately, I would ask that you not approve this tonight and that it be referred back to staff. In full disclosure, I have always been a supporter of this project. It was an excellent planning project. The people that were involved years ago did their homework, and they certainly contributed to this community. But times have changed. And as was pointed out by some of you, 2040 or 2050 is not far away anymore. And I don't think it's been addressed. And I think we're in for more trouble than it's going to be worth to wait 18 months and have a second look. I can answer any of your questions as far as the ferry shrimp goes, having dealt with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Interior federally, and the state of California. But there's a lot of loopholes I see in the staff report, not by the city. I think planning did a very good job with that information that they had, but I do agree with you. I think there's information that's missing, and you need to look at it, because the West End, given the development on Domagony Parkway, this poor city is just going to be hit so hard. When you come through Lambs Canyon, you all know there's nothing down there. You can't widen that road any more than it is already. And from time to time, hay trucks and so forth, it's bumper to bumper. We know what it can be during fog. We also know how dangerous it can be, and some of our own citizens have lost their lives. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but I think the questions and the issues that you raised here tonight have to be answered, because they haven't been, and they haven't been addressed. And the future development of this valley and our city depend on it. Because any development we have, for instance, if there is ever, Warren in Florida again, as a commercial being, it's not going to be able to handle this traffic. And it's all routed through there. The realignment of 79, of course, will be further west. We've only waited 57 years, Lori, now, for that to happen. But, we've got to answer those questions now and plan ahead, and I don't think it's been done. I'm sorry to say that. But too many variables exist in this report. And as I said, I applaud you because you raised them tonight. So I can answer any questions, hopefully, if you have any.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Kevin, with the possibility, because again, this is in retrospect, the road's already in, the way the curvatures happened is there, and so you've got vernal pools on one side at the top and vernal pools on the other side at the bottom. Where do you see it being able to expand into the 6 lane? I mean, 3 lane on each side. I'm thinking, because on the top, I mean, there's a plan already in place to the west, right there. Well, there's this plan to the east. How do you think that we could eke out another lane on each side?
Well, first of all, the existing route is disgraceful. I'm sorry. I'm surprised we haven't had accident after accident after accident. Oh, it's a mess. It never should have been built that way, ever. And if one of my previous agencies did it, shame on them, and shame on whoever did it, because it's disgusting to me. And there's land that has been identified possibly as vernal pools. I think a couple of you mentioned, can you substitute? Absolutely, you can substitute vernal pool land. We've done that all over this county. We substitute with mitigation. And both of those plans have land that can be purchased. We have grant money that's available federally, especially now with with the senator wanting to expand more land. The federal government seems to be producing it in a closet someplace. But we need to take advantage of that. And I don't think that's happening. And it's not a criticism of staff, because the city's gone through a lot of changes and they're still going on. But it's possible to do that. And especially in the area of vernal pools, there's land just to the west that's identified as vernal pool land. And the last time I checked, there were several for sale signs on a lot of that property over there.
So the ability to take and, because I remember it used to be such a process, the MSHCP cells are supposed, they originally were to do that. We were at the breakfast when they formed the concept in Washington, D.C. when
Right.
when Supervisor Mullen set us all down and said we need to form an area or a multi-species habitat. He didn't have the name for it, but we need to form something so it doesn't hold up development, and where you can do this trade-off. They didn't used to like it at all when it was, and so when he said it's outside the cell, I thought of that and I thought, I wonder if it's going to be harder, or if it could go through that same process even though it's not in one of those cells. So this is not. It looks like it's just outside the MSHCP, but there's that land. So if it could be traded for some other land that would provide vernal pools and fairy shrimp new home, that's what you would think would be the resolve for this?
Yes, absolutely. The vernal pool has a certain type of soil in it. And whether it be fortunate or unfortunate, our valley has a lot of it. And north of Devonshire and Warren, we have vernal pools. Stony Mountain has a lot. I think it was almost 15 or 20 lots, actually, that had to be dedicated as a vernal pool. It's on the corner of Devonshire. Well, no, it's not Devonshire. It's further north than that.
Esplanade, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I think it might even be Esplanade if you go far enough, because it doesn't go through from Menlo. Menlo and if it's Esplanade and Warren Road, there's vernal pool soil in there. Metropolitan Water District has land that has vernal pools on it. Larry Minor has land that has vernal pools on it. There's land behind Winco that has vernal pools. And so the mitigation is possible, but I think it's going to take a sit-down meeting, and people that are involved in this need to talk to each other and see what can be worked out to find a solution. And I don't think that has happened. I think that Mr. King has been at a disadvantage with that because it was done before he became the planning director and long before even Deanna was here. And that's part of the problem. And I won't go into the rest of that issue. I'll switch gears.
Yeah, if I could. With your experience as chair of the RCA, is the Section 7 process, is that kind of like a secret kind of thing where it's typically led by public agency, or
yes.
Is it so if for example we wanted the developer to do that, would City of Hemet then be the lead agency to process a Section 7 amendment?
They could be the lead agency. I would suggest that it be the lead agency only because that way you have control of it. If you turn it over, then you don't have control. And I think that was probably one of the issues that occurred way back when, is that it wasn't under the control of the city. But you partner with all these groups, and you all have the same goal. I mean, you want to protect our environment. We know that. And but there's ways to do it that are worthwhile to compromise and still have development that's worthwhile and productive to the community and to the developer. This developer has been faithful to this valley for a long time. And I don't know if it's still under the same ownership, or is it still Benchmark? Yeah. In full disclosure, 20 years ago they supported me, so I don't want you to misunderstand that, but I haven't talked to them recently. So, but it's possible. And the hotel that's supposed to go behind the Winco Center, the owners of that property know they have to mitigate. They know that already. But for this to come in and to clarify a traffic study, because as was pointed out by a couple of your commissioners, we're going to get stuck with this traffic coming from Beaumont and Banning and going to San Diego, because the realignment is still a good 15 to 20 years away, if we're lucky, of 79. And it's all going to end up on these streets. So now you have the opportunity to say, wait a minute, time out, let's do this the right way. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to lecture you because I'm so impressed by you tonight. I haven't been here since the commission's changed, but congratulations.
Thank you, Robin. Is there anybody else in the audience? No? And anybody online? Did we want to get the traffic study engineer?
I'd like permission to speak.
Sure, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Eric Flodine. I'm the property owner. I've been listening to all of this, hoping that I would have my chance to speak many, many minutes ago and we could have answered many of these questions a long time ago. And unfortunately, in this virtual environment where you can't see me and I can just see a little bit of you on the screen, it's a handicap for us. And so we're going to have to play catch up and answer your questions. Again, my name is Eric Flodine. Property owner is Rancho Diamante. We are the exact same property owner that has been the property owner for nearly 20 years. I didn't catch her name, the lady that was speaking before mentioned Benchmark Pacific. My company and Benchmark Pacific have owned this property together since 2002, 2003. The prior owner of Benchmark passed away a couple of years ago. So we took on the processing the rest of the project. But I have been involved in the project for about 13 years, and what I have with me tonight, on the phone, and again, boy, I wish I was there with you, because a lot of these great questions, I wish that we could have answered when you asked them, because I feel like this has gone a kind of a sideways direction. So I will tell you that on the phone with me tonight is the project engineer, who's been, again, all of these people have been on this project for at least 10 years, and most of them almost 15. So the project engineer is Rich Brasher. Rich Brasher used to be with Stantec. Then Stantec, so Stantec was one of the original project engineers around here, and then as well as Pangea, another of the engineers on this project. So Rich is here for the engineering perspective. We have our biologist. Carl Osmundson, who's with Helix. Carl is extremely familiar with these vernal pools because he processed permits for these exact vernal pools, worked with the wildlife agencies and the RCA on these specific vernal pools, and has a ton of experience in this exact location. And then then the project traffic engineer is Urban Crossroads, which Urban Crossroads Urban Crossroads is the consultant that also worked on the city's general plan circulation element. So Urban Crossroads has been involved in this area for a long time, and the representative from Urban Crossroads is Charlene So. So we are here to answer all of your questions, and I wish we could have had a more Q&A instead of what's happened. But we all sit here ready with our history on the project, our experience, and look forward to engaging in this conversation.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, the virtual environment does make it definitely challenging.
And by the way, we here in Hemet at the Planning Commission meetings, you are allowed to attend. So if this continued and you wanted to be here next time, you're certainly welcome.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. So maybe we can just kind of go, we'll start with Commissioner Hill. Do you want to kind of specific questions relative to the traffic control plan.
Yes.
And getting a better understanding of the scope of that
Plan.
Study.
Yes.
What it included, what some of the assumptions were, and so maybe if you could maybe start off on that, give us an overview of the various traffic controls, the traffic studies. That would be great.
Charlene So.
Hi, this is Charlene with Urban Crossroads.
Could you please give us your address for the record, please?
Sure, it's 1133 Camelback Street, number 8329, Newport Beach, California, 92658.
Thank you.
Are there specific questions on the traffic analysis, or should I just go over just the high level to answer some of the questions that were brought up earlier? I could do that.
Let's start there.
Okay, so the traffic study that we did for the Rancho Diamante project looked at two opening year scenarios, looked at a baseline for existing conditions, and then it looked at two opening year cumulative scenarios for two different phases of the project. And then we looked at what's called a general plan build out 2040 year. That's based off of the traffic model forecast that accounts for build out of the city. And as part of that traffic model, the future SR79 realignment is also assumed as part of that 2040 traffic model, and all of those new infrastructure and connections, including the extension of New Stetson and the 79 realignment, those things are taken into consideration as far as the forecasts that are generated from that traffic model. And then based on the traffic analysis that we ran and the long-range forecast, the 2040 forecast that we came up with, we validated that the volumes didn't require any more than a 4-lane section along the project's frontage or more.
So your assumption was that Highway 79 by 2040 would be in?
Well, the traffic model isn't, we don't make those assumptions in terms of what infrastructure is included. We start out with the RIVTAM or the Riverside County Traffic Analysis Model, and there's certain infrastructure that is assumed to be in place as part of the RIVTAM traffic model. The SR79 realignment is one of those infrastructures that are assumed to be in place by 2040 in the RIVTAM traffic model. What we did modify in the version of the traffic model that was used for this traffic study is socioeconomic data that would be reflective of build out of the city of Hemet.
So I just want to confirm, you assumed the realigned 79 was in place at 2040 as part of your traffic assumptions?
Yes, that's correct. And that assumption is in line with what Riverside County uses and or reflects in their traffic model for 2040.
So if 79 was not in place, would that have changed the outcome of the analysis?
For our project.
That would be hard to say because the traffic model isn't a buildup of volumes from previous scenarios. It's a traffic model that looks at socioeconomic data inputs and kind of that looks at these attractions and productions and generates this traffic. So the traffic model, when you add or remove infrastructure, doesn't really have a linear effect. So I really wouldn't know without having access to a model that does not have the 79 realigned in it.
Gotcha. Then, In terms of the geographic area that was assumed tributary to these corridors, specifically 79 and Warren Road, how far-reaching north and south and west was that assumed? Did it include all the way down to Marietta and French Valley area, or was it just localized within the city of Hemet boundary?
Are you talking about the realignment of 79?
No, I'm talking about the analysis that was done that said that it was okay for it to be a 4-lane. Was that analysis?
So the traffic study that we
Go ahead.
The traffic study that we prepared for this project, the boundaries of that study area are Winchester to the west, Dominigoni to the south, Esplanade to the north, and Sanderson to the east.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the extent of the study area that was evaluated for this project.
So in a case where you may have other areas that may feed into the conduits that you're analyzing and that you're studying, and that may provide more, I'm thinking water terms, but more influent or more into your area of study. How does that impact? So in other words, if you stopped at Winchester and you didn't go to the Menifee area, for example, that's where Winchester Ranch and the lakes and Heritage Lakes and all of those developments that have been built since this was done, and if you were to add that, because they typically do come through the city of Hemet when they're coming up through to get to the desert and get to the river. How do you do sensitivity analysis on those types of inputs? And you have to forgive me because I don't know what the terminology is or.
No, it's okay. So the traffic model is a regional traffic model. So what's in the traffic model that was used to generate the 2040 forecast is essentially a representation of 2040 conditions for the entire county, with the exception that we've modified it to reflect build-out of the city of Hemet. For the near-term conditions, I think what you're getting to is, when we start a traffic study, we coordinate with the city's planning department and other surrounding agencies that might be affected and get cumulative development project lists from those agencies. And that list essentially identifies potential development that may occur concurrently with this project, and that we should consider those projects, those projects' traffic and their contribution to our study area intersection. The boundaries of our study area are set by this project's contribution of traffic to those locations, meaning the city has a 50 peak hour trip criteria, so any location in which our project was anticipated to contribute 50 or more peak hour trips was how we selected which locations we were going to evaluate. But other projects within a certain radius, and I want to say that for this project, it was probably, let's see, I would say it's a good 5-mile radius in terms of projects in the surrounding area, including in the county, the city of Hemet, and San Jacinto. Those reasonable projects that may contribute traffic to the study area intersections were included for the opening year cumulative analysis.
Okay, thank you. And again, just to confirm, because there's some conflicting information here, but that's assuming 79 is built. So if 79 is not built, and perhaps, and also, I'm sorry, one more question. When was the study completed?
The traffic study was completed in October of 2017.
2017. So how frequently do you update the model, the regional model, based on activity? Is that done on an annual basis, on a semi-annual basis, or?
So So RIVTAM is actually, I guess, handled by the County of Riverside, so we don't actually update any of the socioeconomic data for the different agencies within the county. That's handled by the county. I know that the county is in process with a new update that's due out later this year in a new model format. However, the RIVTAM version that was used here, I believe, was the last update from 2016, and then with the additional enhancements we made to reflect build-out of the city of Hemet.
Okay, thank you. Any other control questions?
Yeah, I do. So my question is for Charlene. Charlene, I don't know your last name. I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm still not hearing any numbers associated with the traffic study. Can you give me an idea of the number of cars, for the first year of the study to maybe the number of cars for the last year of study? Some sort of unit of measure that I can wrap my brain around for the study.
Sure. So to give you an idea, along Warren Road, along this project frontage, the highest number of daily traffic, you're looking at 12,500 vehicles per day. That's for the segment of Warren Road, south of Mustang Way. And then compare that to, if you want me to jump to 2040, we have a projected volume of 21,100 along the same segment.
Okay.
And the capacity for a 4-lane roadway is 35,900. So we were demonstrating that, the volumes that we were coming up with for Warren Road along the project frontage and all the way up to Florida could be supported by a 4-lane roadway because it's well within the capacity.
But I'm sorry, what was that capacity again?
The capacity for the 4-lane roadway is 35,900. That gets you, when you exceed that number, you're at LOSF.
So do you by chance have the numbers that were assumed on Highway 79 at the same time, or did that was not an output of the model?
We do have it. That's actually not reported in the traffic study because the 79 realignment is treated like it's a grade separated facility, and so it's not because it's not at grade. We actually don't publish any daily traffic volumes except for at the ramp, where the ramps meet the arterial system.
But it's quite possible that if you were to take whatever was going along 79, that the 20+ thousand cars per day on Warren would likely increase because they have to go someplace, right?
It would likely increase. To what extent it would increase, I couldn't tell you because I wouldn't necessarily say that all the daily traffic that's being carried by the 79 realignment should be attributable to Warren Road. It may be a split between Winchester, Warren, and other facilities.
Sure. So going back to the numbers, the 12,500 per day was for what year?
Baseline conditions, so it was existing conditions at the time we conducted the traffic study.
And that's 2017?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's a lot of cars on that road.
Yeah.
So just to put that into perspective, the 12,500 cars per day for your present traffic study is basically 1/3 of what supposedly the 4-lane capacity should be. that correct? So
Yes.
I'm just getting the numbers. And the projected volume in 2040 at 21.7 is when they project that Highway 79 would be in. And then the 4-lane capacity still has room to grow in 2040 to 35,900, but once again, that would be assuming that Highway 79 is in. And we've had last year we had some real long discussions with RCTC regarding the ability to fund Highway 79. And the idea that they had to put up a sales tax to help get a whole lot of projects done that would continue Measure A, which was passed years and years ago, and they would look to include some funding for Highway 79. But that didn't go, and the ability to get this done in our lifetime, I'm afraid we're going to probably have to reincarnate to see Highway 79 done. However, those of you young whippersnappers, you could possibly see it. We started it with Sonny Bono back. He got the first funding for us back in '97. He started it before he passed. He started that, and that's how the first funding got in, so that the first environmental study got done, and that's when you can start rolling with going after funds. But I'm just trying to, like, in perspective, if this were 4-lane and this passed, how much acreage are those vernal pools taken up? Can anybody tell me that? The vernal pools on each side of the road, is there an amount of acreage? So I'm thinking, if that could be replaced, how many acres does it have to be replaced with? And is that a 1-for-1 now, or is it 2-for-1?
Carl Osmundson from Helix, can you please address that question?
Yes, thank you, Eric. This is Carl Osmundson from Helix Environmental, 1180 Festival Road, San Marcos, California. And yeah, great question. I don't have the total acreage numbers right in front of me. However, each vernal pool and its associated watershed I recall there being roughly about a half an acre to an acre in size. If I could too, I wanted to respond to some of the other questions that were brought up after that comment. Does that answer your question, though, for the acreage?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
I apologize, but could we, real quick, just finish up with the traffic, and then we can move to the vernal pools?
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious what the 2021 number is in the study, and the point that I'm trying to get to is, if we took an accurate reading today of how much traffic per day there is, would it be close to that projection?
Yeah, and I think, and this is maybe a question for Cheryl. I'm sorry, I don't have my pen right now. Charlene, but it seems.
Charlene,
So I'm familiar with hydraulic modeling for water, and I'm assuming that it's somewhat similar to a traffic model where you have assumptions and inputs, and based on that is what you get out. Two things that kind of just stand out just right off the cuff is that we're saying that the 2017 condition is only, which is in the model is baseline and is current, is only going to double that build out of the city of Hemet. Basically, right? I mean, we're going from 12,500 to 20-something thousand, and that seems low, just off the cuff. It seems like if the current condition of 2017, when we were kind of in a lull, the development was starting to come in pretty hot, but If that is the baseline condition and we're only going to double it by 2040, with the entire build out of this development plus the city of it by 2040, that just seems low to me. The other thing is the assumption of 79 being in place, and like Lori mentioned, that I think that would be good to do an analysis, some sensitivity analysis on this that says that what happens if that's not in place, and then also maybe an update to that model on more current data, not just in terms of the local street, but also the surrounding communities and the development activity that have happened there, and also to include, I'm not sure if, like, for example, the Mid-County Parkway project, if that was included, because that may relieve some of the east-west traffic, but it sure seems like there's some, we're basing a lot on assumptions and inputs and outputs of this model to feel comfortable that at some point in the future we're going to have enough ability to transport traffic through our city, and that's I'm a little concerned about that, just off the cuff. But was there anything else on the traffic? Yes, Commissioner.
What studies are they basing from 2017, where you're stating 12,500 cars per day, to 2040, or 21,100? What projections are they using? In that projection, are they using just population growth? I mean, we have a lot of development coming around in Hemet, and we have a lot of development in San Jacinto, and both cities, they use the same route to get out of town. And what studies or projections are they using to calculate just a slight double in 20 years?
This is Charlene Fogan. So the baseline daily traffic number comes from the traffic counts that were conducted at the time, so in 2017. The long-range daily traffic number, again, is a projection that comes out of the Ridgetown traffic model. And it also accounts that Ridgetown traffic model was updated to reflect the city of Hemet's general fund build-out conditions. So that socioeconomic data is also input, and there should be reflective of that. To answer a previous question, if we were to take a roadway count today and compare that to an opening year condition volume that was published in the traffic study, the number in the traffic study will be far greater because of the assumptions that go into the traffic study. The amount of cumulative development traffic that was assumed for this traffic study is very conservative in light of just historic growth in the area, because at the time when people were using LOS, it was really important to be ultra conservative in terms of including any and all projects that might be reasonably built within the same time frame as your project. For that reason, like, for example, our opening year 2024 volume has 22,600 vehicles per day along the same segment of Warren near Mustang Way along the project frontage. And then for 2026, you have like 25,000 vehicles per day. And you could probably assume that it would continue to grow in a similar fashion without any other infrastructure, but the Ridgetown traffic model that the county maintains includes future infrastructure such as the 79 realignment. It also includes the Mid-County Parkway and all the interchanges that are proposed as part of that alignment. All these different future connections, as they're anticipated per the different circulation elements for the different agencies, those are taken into consideration and reflected in the 2040 Ridgetown traffic model. I mean, those are not connections or infrastructure that Urban Crossroads has modified the traffic model to incorporate. This is the same Ridgetown traffic model that is being used by every other development project that has to look at 2040 conditions in the county of Riverside.
I don't know if my question was answered about what, are they using like an 8% growth rate, or what are they exactly using to calculate these numbers? I know you're saying 79, SF79.
It's not a growth rate. The traffic model uses socioeconomic data such as, population, households, employment, those kind of input parameters to generate forecasts, and then assigns it to a roadway network that's defined in the traffic model. And that's how we get those traffic volumes for the 2040 condition. It's different than when you look at an existing plus project or an opening year cumulative. Those scenarios are what we call a manual buildup, meaning we take existing baseline conditions, apply some adjusted growth factor to the baseline. It's typically 2% per year that we compound annually out to whatever opening year it is. And then on top of that, we're adding project traffic. We're manually routing cumulative development traffic, which that goes back to why I was explaining that for opening year cumulative conditions, those forecasts are going to be much more conservative than if you were to just go take ground counts today and see what that growth was really like between 2017 and 2021.
Yeah, I would say that if all traffic engineers are using the same model, they probably should update it and use different assumptions if you drive around Southern California in Riverside County, because it seems to be pretty congested. But you mentioned a term LOS. What is the LOS?
Oh, sorry. That LOS stands for level of service. It means like the delay operations of the intersection, the delay and then the associated letter grade that goes with that delay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other traffic control related questions? We'll have an opportunity to discuss.
I'm more confused now than ever, I swear. Because I heard 2024, there was a projection of 22,600 per day, 2026, 25,000 a day. But 2040 had 21,100 per day.
So I think that's because they're assuming in 23 that 79 would be in place and relieve some of that traffic. So if I understood, if you were to take that same rate of increase that she mentioned and showing, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you were to assume that same rate of growth in terms of your 2024 year and just escalate that out to 2040, year by year, you would get to an assumed traffic flow without 79. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So that number would likely exceed 39,000, which is the capacity of the 4-lane.
35.9.
39.5, sorry. Or 35.9, thank you. Yeah. So that kind of answers the question. I mean, that's, to me, anyways, that answers the question in regards to the assumption that 79 is necessary in order to facilitate the general plan amendment to a 4-lane and still meet the traffic needs of our region. And that's an assumption that, like Shirley mentioned, that is in the model that the county is saying, but I think it was mentioned 57 years ago or so we started on this. So that's a tough assumption for us to make.
And actually, when Hemet started working on it, was 97 before Sonny Vernal passed, and that's when we got the first environmental study money that he put up. He put up in a bill. He actually had the bill in place, and after he passed, Mary Bono was in Congress when that first $4 million worth of environmental study, 4.3. So okay, now are we going to environmental?
Yeah, are we done with traffic? Shirley, thank you very much. That was definitely enlightening.
So you're welcome.
So if if we were looking at this and wanting to mitigate the vernal pools and get them out of there so that they could go forward with a 6-lane, I don't know, planning-wise, it looked like the houses were backed right up to the roadway as far as their parcels. But on either side, where the vernal pools are, the 2 acres or 3 acres, or maybe it goes up to 4 or 5, to resolve that and move forward and say 6 lanes on this Warren Road eventually, rather than going back and spending 2 years and holding these guys up for that much longer. Would there be a potential to mitigate by going and buying that 5 acres or 3 acres or 2 acres of MSHCP type land, vernal pool land, and doing the trade, so that even if the 6 lanes didn't get in, that would be cleared up so that it could go in, and they might have to adjust some on that map, but I was looking at it on either side, there was some room where the vernal pools are.
I would like to defer to Mr. Osmundson, who's on the line, who actually did the permitting process for this, and he can give more detail than
Okay.
procedures.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, Carl Osmundson. I'm a biologist with Helix Environmental Planning, 1180 Festival Road, San Marcos, California. And I was able to confirm those numbers for us. So let me start there by doing that. So we have roughly an acre of vernal pool kind of surface area, plus an additional roughly 3 acres of its contributing watershed, or at least that which was determined when the areas were set into conservation and preserved. So we'll call it 4 acres. And to get back to your question about mitigation ratios, that was also your question. The challenging part, and this is why it is so difficult, and I completely respect what was said earlier, and I appreciate the creativity, and I can tell you, I live this from week to week. Sometimes a good thing, sometimes not so good thing, but those of us who have been involved, it's a very, very challenging process. So I don't think that we were oversimplifying things, but I do want to make sure everybody understands that this is not as simple as just exchanging land. And having been a part of the Solera project and working really closely with the agencies, it took us over 10 years. Over 10 years once we got the permits and the vernal pools were avoided and the restoration of one of those pools was started, it took our firm, Helix, and another firm over 10 years just to get it signed off by the agencies. So not only is there a process to crack back open the permit, encroach in the land, go through the CEQA approval, the Endangered Species Act approval, or in this case, maybe there's a benefit of the MSHCP. There's that whole process that we've been talking about, right, 2+ years. But then there's the process of, okay, where we mitigate, there is often what the agencies call an establishment or reestablishment component where you have to create a vernal pools at a minimum 1-to-1 ratio, with the remaining ratio that can be preservation, meaning you can just acquire a piece of property that has vernal pools on it. So that restoration component, again, for a vernal pool, and I can tell you as an expert because at Helix, we've got what we call the Helix Construction Group. We are in charge of doing the actual restoration, the planning, the design, and grading earthwork to create these vernal pools. We are working on one of the largest restoration projects that include vernal pool alkali pools in our part of town here. You guys may have heard of it, the River Park Mitigation Bank along the San Jacinto River. So that expertise, I can tell you, we have it, and I just want to emphasize how challenging it is to do restoration for vernal pools. And so I wanted to get that out. Back to mitigation ratios real quick. Because these vernal pools are already set into preservation within an open space lot, signed off by the agencies, hundreds of thousands of dollars of bond money has been released for them. Because they're already in preservation, what we see is the mitigation ratios often double. So if we were in preservation, the mitigation would be maybe 3 to 1. So if we said 4 acres, we'd have to provide 12 acres of mitigation. Now that's just on a standard vernal pool that isn't already preserved. Because our vernal pool is already preserved, our 3 to 1 ratio may very likely jump up to 6 to 1. 6 to 1 at 4 acres is 24 acres of vernal pool mitigation. Now, this is always subject to agency review and negotiation. That, of course, is part of the process. It is a process to get there. So I wanted to throw those numbers out. Robin had mentioned something that I fully appreciate and I can validate. Vernal pools, they are very special in terms of where they occur. And there are certainly some parts of our town, in Hemet, West Hemet in particular, where we have this great combination of things, soil, hydrology, and vegetation, to have vernal pools. However, that is why they are so sensitive and protected too, is because they are so site-specific. They want to be on certain areas that have those conditions. So in our experience, we have actually explored mitigation options as part of other projects. We did a huge study, Helix did, on the West Hemet pools over a decade ago. And a lot of that land is already in conservation. Or the vernal pools that aren't are so degraded that it would take a substantial amount of money, time, and effort to restore them to a point where the agencies would sign off. Often, this can be 10 years or more. So my point is, A, it's extremely difficult to find the right site to mitigate pools, and B, once we find the site, because the agencies require not only preservation but also this creation component, you would be obligating the mitigation proponent to another 10 plus years of monitoring and an uphill battle because you're fighting these non-native weeds that come in and prevent your site from establishing. So I know that was a very long way of answering things, but I hope that provided some additional context to some of the questions.
And I thank you, and I am both empathetic and sympathetic to those problems. When I'm a previous city council member I was on when Robin Lowe was, and we actually had a big conference here in Hemet, and we called it "Can Common Sense Find a Habitat?" We had 4 congressional members and Federal Senator Dirk Kempthorne, Sonny Bono, Richard Pombo, forget the other 2, but that "Can Common Sense Find a Habitat?" was a very apropos, I think, title, and that was very early on in the vernal pool process. So I want you to know I'm really sensitive about the amount of time these things can take, and I don't want to see us, I would really like to see us mitigate this if possible. However, I know what you've gone through to get to where you are, because we knew, I knew Doug Avis and when you guys all started this process way back. I was hoping that things got better since I've been gone, and now I'm back as planning commissioner, but sounds like they still take an awful long time and require an awful lot to get it done.
Yes, thank you so much for that, and I do hear you and have a tremendous amount of respect for the tenure and the career that I'm hearing from not only planning commissioners but also Robin, who had spoken earlier, and definitely appreciate those sympathies. And I only bring it up because again to prevent us from not saying we are, but saying the process might be simple. It is a very long road and challenging, even with the right support and team members. It certainly is an uphill battle. So if these pools were not already protected, if the agencies didn't sign off on it, if they weren't attached to existing permits and an approved, developed, built-out project, we might have a much better chance. However, unraveling all those, as I call it unpacking. I kind of had to pack the suitcase to get the agencies to sign off, and now we would have to unpack that, and that would be just me knowing, having done the packing, the unpacking would be 10 times harder. So I just wanted to state that to everybody, and thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the environmental? Is there any other public comments or questions for the owner? All right. Is there anyone online that would like to say anything else?
This is Rich Brasher, engineer for the project.
Go ahead, Rich. Can you just state your address, please?
Sure. Rich Brasher, PO Box 57, Atlanta, Georgia, 30308. I was in San Diego for 33 years. I've been here for about a year, continuing to work on the entitlements for these projects. I've been involved with Rancho Diamante since 2003. First with Keith Companies, then with Stantec, then with Pangea, and then on my own. A couple of comments. One regarding the straight shot of Warren Road. That was fine in the years past when there was just the skewed crossing of the Hemet Channel and the adjacent railroad tracks. But with these projects, with all the Rancho Diamante projects, there will be the construction of the 6-lane New Stetson, which runs from northeast to southwest along the northern edges of projects. There will be curves, regardless of vernal pools are there or not, because of the need to intersect at a right angle between Warren and New Stetson. So there would be a curve to the east and then a curve back to the west to hit New Stetson at a 90-degree angle. Also, I haven't heard any mention of, I know that David Leonard had mentioned the increase in the minimum curve radius for a 6-lane arterial versus the 4-lane, going from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet, and the impact that would do not only to the tentative map on 36841 on the west side of Warren, but also impacting and forcing the removal of perhaps a dozen homes within the existing Solera community.
So, in regards to the Stetson alignment, are you saying that would offset the traffic burden north-south, or what does that have to do with getting traffic from the south side of Hemet to the north side of Hemet?
Not necessarily related to the volumes. There will be some siphoning of traffic from southbound Warren from Florida
onto the southwesterly New Stetson that would take it over to California and then ultimately to 79. But more importantly, the need is there for the reversing curves regardless of whether the pools are there or not to hit New Stetson at a 90-degree angle.
Oh, I see what you're, okay. So, yeah.
The New Stetson is proposed with a 152-foot right-of-way, which I believe is the same as Dominagoni. So it will be a major road.
But if the vernal pools were not there and you did not have to have the S curve, you're saying you would still, because you'd have to have you'd still have to have that 1,500 foot radius. So, well, to come into Stetson at a 90 degrees. So,
That's correct. The vernal pools just add an additional curve. They don't cause all the curves, but just an additional one beyond what would be required if they weren't there.
Removing a few houses might be a little bit more challenging than the vernal pools.
Other mitigation measures.
The commercial area that, in fact, they're grading it now, and then Saboba owns the two of the parcels north and south of Dominagoni and Winchester Road, and then they are grading a commercial area that is on the northwest side of Dominagoni and Winchester. Were those all included in the traffic study? Did that come into play at all? Because that is where Highway 79 intersects there.
Charlene, are you still on?
This is Charlene. Yes, this is Charlene. Can you please repeat what was the question? It like cut out there.
I'm sorry, I didn't think of this when you were on. The Dominagoni Parkway and Winchester Road is an intersection that is lighted right now. And there are commercial centers that more than likely are going on each corner of that intersection. One is already developing. They are grading for it now. Did that come into play when you did the traffic study? Do you remember if there were those numbers that were included? Because I know you said the development that's going along the Dominagoni Parkway was, an impact because of the number of houses that are already being built.
So at the corner of Winchester and Dominagoni, we did have a project that was on the southwest corner of the intersection. Let's see.
The one that's being graded right now is on the northwest corner. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We did include the Crossroads at Winchester project, which includes, I believe, 32,500. I'm sorry, not 32,500. 32.5 acres of commercial use.
Right.
So that was taken into consideration.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Well, that is one of 4 corners. When we met with because I'm on Saboba's Economic Development Corporation, so when we met with the county, I think they're thinking that it could be 4 corners, probably a minimum of 3 corners of commercial development on that corner.
Okay, so we did include 3 corners that had commercial. The only corner that did not have commercial on it was the northeast corner. The southwest, northwest, and southeast corners all assume some level of commercial development.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? And is there anything else from the applicant that you'd like to say?
Yes. This is Eric Flodine, the applicant landowner. I guess I would like to understand, and first off, you know, I myself, with my other hat, I'm also a planning commissioner. I've been a planning commissioner for 10 years now and served as chair for 5 of those. And so I certainly respect and appreciate the questions that you're asking here. And like I said before, I wish we could have been there in person, because we could have just had more of a, you know, a give and take type of conversation to answer your questions sort of as they came up. What I'd like to understand, I guess, is, I mean, I see the agenda packet and I see what the resolution is, but I'm actually a little unclear on when the City Council at the second reading directed staff to bring this item back to Planning Commission. I mean, it was a very limited focus. The track map is approved, the EIR is certified. The specific plan amendment requires a second hearing, a second reading, and so the focus of coming back to Planning Commission was really to flush out more of these items and concerns. And as I'm listening to the dialogue today, I think we've done that. So I guess I feel like we've done that. I feel like we've explored it together. We've heard your concerns, and I guess I'd like to get a pulse as to, do you think that we've answered the questions that you have?
Well, I mean, this is Kennerworth, and from my perspective, I first off, on the issue of the vernal pools, completely understand the challenge there, and the bed that's been made, if you will, in terms of having that already established and accepted. The question that was answered for me that gives me some concern is about the traffic study itself, because like I kind of led off with, we're making, this is the last chance that we have to address a north-south corridor on the west end of Hemet, assuming that the Highway 79 project is not built. And so we are darned if we do, darned if we don't. But what I have learned from this dialogue is that the traffic study that was done actually shows that it should be a 6-lane based on 79 not being there. And maybe I have that wrong, but I mean the way that I understand it. But based on the assumptions that went into the traffic study, that alignment should be a 6-lane. Now we are where we are with prior approvals on the east side of Warren Road that have been accepted, and I think that the challenge from my perspective as a lifelong resident of the city is that just because we've made mistakes in the past, or not necessarily mistakes, that's maybe the wrong phrase, but maybe just because some things got by in the past, the reason I'm here on this commission personally is to try to address not making those same mistakes moving forward. And so that is the primary concern that I have personally, is that we are at a point where obviously you've invested a tremendous amount of effort and resources to get to this point. The development on the other side have invested a tremendous amount of resources and been accepted, and we are at a point where we're kind of down that hill. But at the same time, if we don't address this, or at least maybe get more public input, get more residents to understand and to put some input into this decision and understand that this is not just a planning commission passing the buck on one side, or So I'll stop at that. That's where my concern is that based on the traffic study that was done, the assumptions that were in, it should be a 6-lane road in my opinion.
So Commissioner, I think that's a really great point that I'd like to get clarity from. I'd like to get clarity from our traffic consultant. I guess I have a different understanding or recollection, I should say, than what you're presenting, because this project, the traffic impact analysis, which was prepared, I guess the 17 was when the numbers were, I think, collected, but there's a 2018, 2019 traffic impact analysis. There's a 2018 impact analysis. There's a 2019 focused analysis. Those analyses were reviewed by the city engineer. They were reviewed by the EIR consultants that the city hired. Those traffic studies were included with the staff report and packets that went to the Planning Commission in December, and also to City Council in February. So I bring this up because a lot of eyes have seen the documents that were today, kind of peeling apart and looking at very detailed information, which I appreciate. I'm just saying none of this is new. It was in the PC's information. It was in the City Council's information, and so that's one fact. But the other thing is, I hear what your concern is, and my recollection, and hopefully Charlene has this answer, my recollection was that the traffic impact analysis findings were that Warren Road could function as a 4-lane road with the build-out of this specific project, this one-track map, and adjacent property, or not adjacent properties, but some horizon of future growth. So the 4-lane road serves the project at build-out and serves adjacent, short-term horizon projects without 79. 79, to my understanding, didn't, the lack of 79 never being there or was there when we're all reincarnated, I don't remember it being the driving factor of the 6 to the 4.
Well, real quick, first off, the reason why the detail is being brought up here is because that was specifically what the City Council wanted us to do. The first item, the issue of concern, was to discuss the methodology used in the traffic studies to support the change of Warren Road from a 6 to a 4. So that's why, frankly, there's more focus on it now than there was previously. That's per council direction. And I would like clarification on that, because I specifically asked a couple times to confirm that the Highway 79 was assumed to be included.
Sorry, this is Charlene. The Highway 79 realignment was only included for the long-range 2040. It was not included for the E+C, baseline, or any of the opening year scenarios.
Right.
Only contemplated as a long-range facility.
But for the 20, and this is where my concern is that at 24, the total number is 20. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but basically there's a doubling of traffic on Warren Road, assuming that 79 is there. But if you escalate from, year by year from 2024, then you would exceed the max capacity of a 4-lane highway without the relief in 2040 of the 79. Correct?
I wouldn't say, I couldn't say without running the numbers whether you would exceed that 4-lane capacity if you were to extrapolate it out from what we have, from the data that we have in the study in terms of baseline, the cumulative projects, and this project's traffic. But one of the things that should also be considered is not just the functioning of the roadway segment, but also the intersections on either ends of those segments. So even if the 4-lane segment were to be at LOSF, just over LOSF, or at LOSE, if we could demonstrate that the intersections on either end of that segment could support support the volume of traffic during the peak hours, and the end result would still be the same recommendation, which is that the 4-lane capacity actually exceeds the capacity. I don't know. I'd have to run out the numbers to tell you exactly what that number ends up being. But my point was that even if that number got very close to capacity or slightly exceeded that capacity, the next step would be to look at the intersection operation on either end of that deficient segment, because the intersections are essentially choke points along the roadway segment. And so if the intersection can operate acceptably and process all the peak hour traffic, then it would be presumed that the roadway segment, you wouldn't have to widen the roadway segment necessarily because the roadway segment doesn't work, so long as the intersections on either end work.
Are those intersections the existing intersections or intersections as part of the project?
Well, it's a combination of both, right? It includes the existing Stetson, the realigned new Stetson, Mustang, all along, Warren Road along the frontage where we recommended the downgrade from 6 lanes to 4 lanes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So regarding these numbers, and I know it's very amateurish, but I just took it as a percentage of what the increases would be and where we would be if Highway 79 did not go in, if the percentage of increase in traffic remained steady. So, and again, I know it's very amateurish, but it's also consistent with what is here, and it's about 15% every 5 years. So, considering that, and considering we have, one less year at the end because we're in 2021, and we went from there. And don't take this is absolute it, but we would be at 37,029 cars per day in 2040 versus the 35,900 that is supposed to be what a 4-lane can have at capacity. So as far as what we would be over, would be 1,129 cars over what our basic 4-lane capacity. That's if nothing happened with 79. No other north-south feeders got built that would relieve it. It would be just if traffic continued on this level. So I did this just now, but it was just so I could think about how much over we would be, and it's a lot less than I thought. So it was 1,129 cars over the 35,900 that we have as capacity for 4-lane.
Well, I think that would be, and going back to the question in terms of what is the concern, and I think that's really the crux of it. As a planning commission, and you know this better than me, I'm sure, but you're answering to your community, and so want to feel comfortable that we're making a decision with good stuff, and so I would personally appreciate maybe an opportunity to have you in person and focus on explaining the traffic study, maybe an opportunity to kind of rerun, update, and specifically address some of the questions and concerns that we have. Because as of right now, the way that I see it is that by approving this, I would be saying that we're by 2040 we're going to potentially be above a 4-lane capacity, and we're going to increase the gridlock in our city, and by that time it'll be my kids driving me around, I'm sure, but I want to feel right to my community that whatever we say is is based on good quality information. And I'm not doubting that the model is good, except for the fact when you look around the county, the model must not be too accurate. But would that be something, and I'm not sure if this would be in public hearing or in discussion, but I guess it's public because I want your input. Would that be something that you'd be open to, is maybe continuing this to another meeting so that we can actually have that in-person discussion with a focus? I think we understand. I mean, I understand, and I'll let everyone else speak to it. But I certainly understand item 2 on the issue of concern, which is the position of the RCA regarding the vernal pools. We didn't talk about item 4, the sufficient space to accommodate, but in speaking with staff, that was not a concern at all. And then, so really focusing on item 1 and item 3, which is the methodology of the traffic study and the traffic study assessing future expectation of traffic, and whether or not that would be a rerun and a recalibration of that analysis or not. Would you be open to continuing this to another meeting and focusing on that?
Yes, Commissioner, I would. I would appreciate that. I think we made a lot of headway today, and I understand more clearly some of the main points of concern, and our team could certainly huddle and maybe prepare a PowerPoint show, or only because I'm a visual person, but maybe just something visual that we can have this discussion. So I think a continuation of this would be an excellent idea.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful overall, and then maybe the council could get some of its questions answered because they sent it back to us because apparently they had their own questions too.
All right. Well, thank you. How much time would you want? When is our next? May 18th?
Next meeting is May 18th, and after that is June 1st and June 15th.
May 18th, June 1st, June 15th.
So I'm going to put Charlene So right on spot here. She's going to have to do the heavy lifting. So Charlene, can this be ready to go in 2 weeks? Like 2 weeks minus 2 days, so that it can be prepared for a planning commission packet. But or do you think that you need until the June 1st meeting?
No, I think we could do it by the next meeting.
Okay, and Commissioner, that's what we would like to request, is the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Is there any other comments or discussion with?
No, I would recommend closing the public hearing.
All right. Yeah, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public hearing and open it up for discussion internally.
Well, we should continue the public hearing to the next meeting because we want to keep it open. Yeah, so it wouldn't be closing the public hearing, it would be continuing.
Is there any other, I mean, we can open it back up here momentarily, but...
Chairman Worth, I just wanted to remind the applicant that we would have to have the staff report in by next week, so it doesn't really give them 2 weeks. So I don't know if that timing still works for them or not.
We will open a public hearing, but I guess internally, I mean, one of the things outside of public hearing that I wanted to get your input on, get legal counsel input on, because there has already been approvals in one form or another on the east side. Is there a liability to the city, a risk of liability, if we were to say no to this one, but there was obviously a yes to the other side?
Chair, can you repeat that question for me, please?
So, development on the opposite side of Warren Road was approved considering a 4-lane road. and not a 6-lane. And there's a traffic construction right now that was recently approved. So if we were to say that a 4-lane is not, that we're not going to do the general plan amendment now, is there liability from any other development adjacent to Warren Road that would be required to make this a 6-lane?
There certainly would be, because there's a difference in standards. So there is the risk of liability with this particular.
Thank you. Anything else?
I just want to understand, I want to make sure I'm clarifying what's being said, but are they going to do a kind of an inside traffic study before the next meeting, just to see what average cars are per day before we get a real number as of this year compared to 2017? Because just the numbers just don't seem to really add up the right way. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. Are we, the next meeting, they're going to give us a more of a detailed insight of traffic study, but are we still, just like what Commissioner Hill was saying, is like we would like to see kind of what 2021 is, and see if it's far off from the 2017 projection, or if it's kind of in line with that. But I just feel, unfortunately, the applicants, we live here day to day, and we know the traffic that comes in and out of that town, and especially Warren Road, to come leaving and going. And is there a way that just within the city that we do traffic studies, or such a thing, or is there not such a thing?
But the traffic study would have to be run, if you want the apples-to-apple comparison, then they would have to run it the way they ran it previously, with the 2021 being the baseline. So I don't know if we could ask the applicant again, but I don't know if they can achieve that within a 1-week time frame.
But I mean,
it doesn't have to be in a week. We can extend that out.
Yeah, well, right. And I guess, I mean, if it's, at the very least, the city council sent this back to us for these four items. And I mean, from my perspective, like I said, I feel pretty comfortable with at least 2 of them. I feel kind of less comfortable with the other 2. And it was difficult to have the virtual, the hybrid meeting. So it would be nice to have a focused presentation on the methodology, all these things that all the questions that we were raising, and then maybe, obviously there would need to be some level of review and validation from the city engineer, city staff. Just look at that and say, yeah, that makes sense, and then, so yeah, it seems like we want a little bit more time, but I mean, are you suggesting that it would be a whole new study, or are we suggesting that it would be a?
That shouldn't be necessary, should it?
I would.
Study?
I don't think. My thought would be let's look at the study that was done, explain that study, make sure we understand what the assumptions were, what it included, maybe get into some. If there's not, and I think Shelley mentioned she could run some different scenarios, but
I think we could get a lot of good clarification, certainly with them here in person, and we appreciate that they're on the phone and have done a good job with a lot of it. But if they feel like they can continue to the 18th and satisfy us because they've heard our questions. We will have one more commissioner because she's out of town today.
That's good. That's a good point, too.
That we should allow them to do it on the 18th.
Yeah, I don't see the need for a new study. But the one thing that would be nice to have is, could somebody put a counter on that street and get a current, accurate cars per day?
Yeah.
For today. What is that? That's it.
You know, the interesting thing is, you know, if you would have checked it like what 8 months ago, it would have been way down, right?
Exactly.
With all right. Anything else for our discussion? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and reopen public hearing. And so public hearing is open. You heard Director King. Is there any concern about meeting the 18th, or do you want to push this back to June 1st?
Well, as the applicant, I can tell you, I can commit with Charlene, we can commit to having the information to HP by the 14th, but not before.
And then we would.
And don't your planning commission agenda items get posted on the website on Fridays?
It gets posted on the 13th, on Thursday, but we also need to have time to draft the staff report and so on. So the 18th is going to be tight. If you can get the data to me no earlier than 14th, then that would make it very difficult for us to put it on the 18th.
So the next date is June 1st?
June 1st.
Can we just move it to June 1st then?
I agree. I concur.
Are you okay with June 1st?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, well,
I'd like to move that we continue this item to June 1st.
Commissioner Beamster for second. Good, 4-0. Thank you very much for your time and for the willingness to come back in and work with us on understanding of why it is important to us. So we look forward to June 1st. I guess we're on to agenda item number 7A, City Attorney Reports.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have nothing substantive to report, and last week, Interim City Attorney Stephen Graham introduced me, but I would like to reintroduce myself. My name is Sunny Huynh. I've been with the firm since the start of my legal career, and I advise and work with public agencies on litigation. I want to bring both of those perspectives. I've been working on Hemet matters since our firm has assumed it, and I really look forward to spending the first and third Tuesdays with the commission here. So, looking forward to working with you all.
Nice to meet you and welcome.
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 All right, Director King, Community Development Reports.
Good evening. So what I can give you an update on is that, one, we did receive an approval letter for our LEAP grant request through HCD. That is a $250,000 grant, non-competitive, so we got that awarded. And the food truck ordinance and the sidewalk vendor ordinance, which was combined ordinance, was presented to City Council at last City Council meeting as a work study. They did take that opportunity to consider it as a first reading. So the first reading went through on that day. That also goes same for the cannabis ordinance as well. We presented as a work study, but they took an action as the first reading at the last City Council meeting. So those three items are read in as a first reading at the last City Council. So if you'd like to have the draft ordinance, we can present that, or we can provide that as soon as we have the staff report ready for the council. And that's all I have to report for Community Development Director section.
Thank you. And future agenda items.
Great, thank you. Again, we have a lot of different projects coming along. We have some commercial electoral market express coming to you before. Citrus Point, this is to build out the remainder of 27 lots. So if you remember, there were 80 I believe it was 80 units that was built on the east end of town, Citrus Point, and the remaining 27 lots was in transit of acquisition. So now they finally did acquire, and they're going to build out the entire project on the east end. So they'll be coming in for those remaining 27 lots for you. And there are some cleanup items we'll bring before you for the zoning ordinance. We have some residential development coming through on McSweeney. We have Dunkin' Donuts on the way. And we have Western zoning consistency that's coming. We're waiting for a luck issue for that. And general plan annual report. This is usually done at the April month, but we're running slightly behind, but we'll still bring you that annual report for you.
Great, thank you. And one more time for planning commissioner reports.
Okay. Commissioner Hill?
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Commissioner Beamsterfer?
Nothing to report.
Vice Chair Van Arsdale?
Nothing to report, but just a clarification question. You said the Western zoning consistency had a loop. It still needed comments from airport land use. Is that it?
Correct. They'll have a hearing, and so we're just waiting for the results of that hearing. And Chairman Worth?
Nothing to report. And so if there's nothing more, then we'll be adjourned until May 18th. 6 p.m.